Welcome to William and Mary's Spring Tack Lecture. This is, as those of you who have been here before, one of the most anticipated evenings of our academic calendar. My name is Peggy Agures. For those of you who do not know me, I have the honor and privilege of being William and Mary's Provost. And tonight you are in for a thought-provoking and timely conversation. Before we go any further, I want to first recognize Martha and Carl Tack. Thanks to their extraordinary generosity, the William and Mary community has the opportunity to gather each semester to hear from one of our distinguished faculty as they share research and ideas that inspire and inform us. The Tack Faculty Lecture series has become one of the university's great traditions, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us when I say, no, I don't want to give away anything. This is for Rachel to do, so I'm going to move to the side. Where was I? The Tack Faculty Lecture Series is one of the university's most cherished traditions, and we're very, very thankful for the Tack's continued and meaningful support. Martha is here with us tonight. Please join me in thanking them. So I want to take a brief moment, since I have you here as a community, to share an announcement that I think that is especially fitting considering the topic we're about to discuss. So William and Mary and the Virginia Joint Commission on Technology and Science are hosting a tech policy symposium on campus on June 3rd. So in case you were wondering what this is an event where you, as participants, can engage directly with members of the General Assembly and members of the Joint Commission, hear from faculty researchers not only at William and Mary, but from other institutions in Virginia as well, contribute to forward-looking conversations that inform, and this is the important part, future legislative studies and policy recommendations, and participate in discussions and talks that feature leaders from government, industry, and academia. So if you want to really be part of something like this, June 3rd, you're going to hear more from me about that. Details, registration, and other things will be communicated to the campus community through various channels. So if tonight's conversation sparks something in you, and I know that it will, June 3rd is an opportunity to take that conversation further, where policy actually is made. And now, I'm delighted to introduce tonight's lecturer, Rachel Chung. She is Clinical Professor of Operations and Information Systems at the Raymond Mason School of Business. Tonight also marks a special milestone for the Tack Lecture Series, as Professor Chung is the first faculty member from the Mason School to deliver this distinguished lecture. And what a moment to step into the spotlight. Professor Chung's work explores the intersection of technology, business, and human-centered learning. She doesn't just study how organizations adopt new tools. She asks what those tools do for us and what they demand of us. She's exactly the right person to help us, all of us, think through the promises and possibilities of artificial intelligence. Her lecture this evening is Wisdom and Machines, How Liberal Arts and AI Learn from Each Other. And it asks a question many of us, and I know because we've had many of these discussions already, many of us are wrestling with right now. In a world that is increasingly shaped by AI, what remains uniquely human? And perhaps just as importantly, and I'd argue that this is the most urgent question, what should remain uniquely human? Here at William and Mary, we're unusually well-positioned to ponder that question. What makes this university particularly suited for this conversation is that we've never believed that education should fit neatly into silos. For more than 3 centuries, our university has been a place that explores the hard questions and prepares students for success in a rapidly changing world. We've been doing this longer than the United States has existed. That history matters tonight. As AI becomes more powerful and more present in our daily lives, the conversation requires the perspectives of the sciences, the humanities, social sciences, business, and the arts. It requires, in other words, exactly the kind of university we are. Tonight, Professor Chung will encourage us all to think not only about what AI can do, but most importantly, about what we should do with it. At a moment where new technologies seem to evolve by the hour, it can be really tempting to focus on the next development, chase the next breakthrough before we've made sense of the last one. One of my famous ancestors, Socrates, has famously said, and I paraphrase here, that wisdom begins with knowing what you do not know. I have a feeling he would have had a great deal to say about artificial intelligence, and I, for once, would be very interested in hearing this. Tonight, the lecture offers something more valuable than the latest update, a chance to step back from the hype and ask the deeper questions, the questions that do not have a prompt, the questions that do not have an algorithm. In other words, what kind of thinkers, leaders, and citizens do we want to become? I suspect by the end of the evening, you'll leave with more questions than you arrived with, and I mean this as the highest possible compliment. Please join me in welcoming Professor Chung.
Thank you, Peggy. So you should have two puzzle pieces, and we are just going to use this to do some polls. So is the internet amazing, green puzzle piece, or evil? Only one, only one. You have to pick. Does nuclear technology power my house or kill people? Is AI brilliant or dumb? You're using the wrong AI. You're using the free version. Of course it's dumb. Does AI come from OpenAI, Sam Altman, or liberal arts? Okay, you know too much already. I'd like to start tonight with one of my favorite movies, Sense and Sensibility, and really it's, we know that it's a novel, and about these two sisters. One is all about sense, all logic, all reason, deep thoughts, right? The other one is all emotion, sense and sensibility. Which sister is like AI? In fact, psychologist Dan Kahneman will call them system 1 versus system 2, right? Think fast versus slow. One of my favorite psychologists won the Nobel Prize in 2002, really to help us think about why people make not very wise decisions, but I think he will probably call them dumb decisions. So his entire career is about how people make stupid decisions. And a lot of it is because we have a very, very strong system 1. It's full of emotions. We like to react with our intuition. We want to be intuitive. And a lot of it is driven by our emotion, but that also leads us to make a lot of unwise decisions. So he actually recommends that we should think slow, using system 2, which is all logic and reasoning. However, system 2 takes a lot of effort. You have to think slowly, takes a lot of time, and you have to think hard. In the afternoon, when you're tired and you're about to take a nap, your system 2 is out of work. You are all emotion, you can't do anything anymore. So a lot of times we have a very powerful system 1, or the sensibility sister, but the other one really is a little problematic. In fact, not only that system 1 is stronger than system 2 actually has a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes in my for sure, because we have limited memory, we get tired, we need naps, we hate repetitive work, we get bored, right? And we have all sorts of biases. And that's just the way our machinery works, the brain, how we work. And Kahneman has done many, many studies to demonstrate, do very powerful demonstrations of these effects. And that's why he got a Nobel Prize. And this is not actually very surprising, because making good decisions has always been known to be hard, especially not only that we have a stronger system 1 than system 2, if we have to deal with, say, managing a government, managing a company, a big organization, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of factors to consider. And we are only human. We know that we can remember about 7 things at a time. That's why our phone number has only 7 digits. But managing a company, a government, a country, that's a big job. There's definitely more than 7 things to know. So using our faulty brain alone is just not very effective. We need some sort of cognitive crutch to help us make better decisions. And we know that from Herb Simon, who got the Nobel Prize in economics for this type of work, right, in 1978. And see, Herb Simon was a political scientist, actually, but he worked in the psychology department and doing all this work for one of the first public administration program in the country. So we need cognitive crutches, because we get tired and we don't always think through things very clearly. And we need crutches, and these crutches are not just for physical mobility. We need crutches for the mind. For example, I've been at William & Mary for 7 years, and I'm embarrassed to say I can never find where Sattler is. And so I'm always a little nervous when I have to give a talk in Sattler. Where is Sattler? Without my GPS, without a map, I would never be able to find where Sattler is. It's just not a straight line from my office. And in fact, anybody has seen the movie 50 First Dates? We're all Drew Barrymore. In fact, AI is actually Drew Barrymore. When it wakes up every morning, it already forgets everything. But we can remember things by writing things down, videotaping. There are all these crutches that can help Drew Barrymore actually remember things. And we actually use all these tools. Not only Drew Barrymore uses these tools, we love making tools. Our ancestors have been making tools for hundreds of years. And we're very proud of making tools in Williamsburg. In fact, we are not the only species that use tools. Oh, sorry. Even monkeys know how to use an emotional crutch. The ability to make tools to help ourselves is something that economist Richard Thaler has observed and actually has used that as a tool to help us improve our lives, improve our societies. The book Nudge is all about setting up the architecture, the choice architectures in our society to help us go to the gym, make better decisions, save for retirement, pay taxes. And all of these, you can think about these as either social tools or cognitive tools. Humans are all full of curiosity. We're curious about how birds fly, and that's how we got inspired, not we. The Wright brothers down the street got inspired to create these artificial birds that can fly. AI is the same thing. These scientists, people who are very curious, when they go to a biology class, they saw a theory of how the brain works, they got really, really inspired and wanted to create an artificial brain. And that's really the basis of AI. And that came from 1943, 40 years after the airplane was invented. So a lot of people think that evil people invented AI to kill us. So let's learn about who these evil people are. 1943, 2 college kids went to a neuroscience lecture. Very few people knew how the brain works. The scientists, the biologists finally had an idea about how neurons fire, and one neuron's activation will activate the next neuron. And during this sequence of neural activities, this is how we learn. And these kids were so inspired, they wanted to write down a mathematical model to mimic that. These were math equations and drawings because we didn't have any computer back then. 1956, a bunch of nerds. These are all like your very young and bright and promising math professors. They got together at Dartmouth and had a first conference on AI and named this field AI, artificial intelligence. And they decided that they're going to create and solve this AI problem over the summer. That was their summer project. Luckily, we had Alan Newell and Herb Simon, and they were working, this is in Pittsburgh, and they were cognitive psychologists, and they were thinking about, so Herb Simon, again, was trained as a political scientist, so his goal is really to think about how humans can make complex decisions, even though we have limited brain power and capacity. So they were determined to design a computer that can help humans make decisions, and they thought that if they can teach a computer to learn how to play chess, then maybe you can use that for other decision-making activities. So you can see their computer, and you see a lot of these chess-playing pictures. I was trained as a psychologist in Pittsburgh, so I took a lot of chess playing. There were a lot of chess studies in Pittsburgh. But basically, they invented the first AI model that actually worked. So it's not just on a piece of paper, an actual working machine that's called logical theorist. So this is the birth of the first working AI model, an actual machine. 1958, Rosenblatt, who was also, I believe, they were all either biologists or psychologists. So I believe he was a biologist who then turned into a psychologist who actually built the first artificial neuron. So look how big that is. And this drawing, and this is something that was very profound. People were very excited about this perceptron, and it was able to solve some problem. You can train it to learn, to classify something. And people were very, very excited about this until the first AI winter. Another computer scientist published this book. It's also called Perceptron, but this is a book that has full of mathematical proofs to show that the single perceptron does not work. It can solve certain problems, but if the problem is a little bit more complex, then nothing works. So this book, and actually Minsky, the author, went on to win a Turing Award, which is the Nobel Prize in computer science, for his work to prove that this doesn't work. So the one neuron AI is officially dead at this point. Until another nerd, a mathematical psychologist. Have you ever even thought that it's possible to major in mathematical psychology? So Ramohat, he was able to discover that you can use calculus to actually train 2 neurons, chain them together and actually train them using calculus. And that discovery brought neural networks back, because now you can get a bunch of neurons together and you can solve problems that you could not solve in the past. So being able to chain the neurons together having multiple layers, more than one. Multiple really just means more than one. And be able to train the whole model together using calculus was profound. In 1985, finally, that's the end of the first winter. People were very excited. And in fact, this is 1985 in San Diego. A year later, some other nerds in Pittsburgh decided that they can train 3 neurons using backpropagate, the algorithm that Raymond discovered, and they put that in a truck and used that little neural network to teach the truck to drive, to learn how a human drives. And then that truck learned how to drive using 3 layers of neural network. And it drove itself from Pittsburgh to Erie, Pennsylvania. That's a 2-hour drive, autonomously, 100%. They never told anybody. The police didn't know. Over the next 10 years, this is a DARPA project. Okay. So they were able to get better and better neural network. And eventually in 1995, the 5th model drove itself from Pittsburgh to California, cross-country drive. I was still in college at that time, but then that was already part of the second AI winter, because people thought, okay, this is very cute, but it can solve like very specific problems, but what else can you do? You know, I don't need a self-driving car. And so for the next 20, 30 years, there was no funding for AI. However, in the psychology field, people continue to get very excited about neural networks and connectionism, because it is really a different way of understanding how the mind works compared to the traditional literature. So these are all the different books I read. I was a super nerd in psycholinguistics. I was studying how babies learn how to speak. And there's so many rules, so many books by Steve Pinker. I followed every single one of his books. I got autographed copies from him. But basically, these linguists, psycholinguists, running experiments after experiment, Chomsky, trying to prove that there's no way that you can learn language statistically. You have to have some sort of language instinct to learn. So there was huge debates between these 2 camps. Those who believe that you can just learn by statistics and those who believe that you cannot. And at that time, of course, these leading scholars win, because nobody else, there's no ChatGPT, nobody else can prove otherwise. And neural networks were just laughing jokes, because they don't really work. 1998, I took my first neural networks course. At that time, people would not say the word. Like, neural networks were bad words. You do not want to say that you study neural networks, so nobody will give you funding. This group was called Parallel Distributed Processing. So this is the group where we had, like Jeffrey Hinton. This is the group that invented the backpropagation algorithm that was able to train 2 neurons and more. So around 2000, even though nobody else was doing neural networks, there were still a few people in Pittsburgh that were interested in this, so including the director of the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon. So I was in the psychology department, and we study emotions, human facial expressions. And the psychologist, very famous psychologist Paul Ekman. Anybody heard of Paul Ekman? Okay, he's the mastermind of the TV show Lie to Me, and also the Disney movie In and Out. It's all about emotions. And he came up with this coding system. He codes every wrinkle, every muscle on your face, and turn that into a math equation. And that will tell you, with that equation, we can know if you have a true smile or fake smile, if you're sad, happy, and so on. So there is a code for an equation for every emotion. And our students have to code the videos frame by frame. There are 30 frames every second of video. and humans have to, all these PhD students have to meticulously code every single frame of the video, and we had about 1,000 videos that were coded. So when Takeo Kanade, the director of Robotics Institute at the time, discovered that we have this data set, he was very excited, and he thought that would be a great way to train his robots to recognize facial expressions. Just to give you the historical context, Mark Zuckerberg was still in middle school at the time, or maybe high school. So our robots were cute, but they can't really find where your head is. You know, if you wear a hat, you wear glasses, all of a sudden you are invisible to our robots. So it was very difficult to even find people's eyes. These are called landmarks on your face, nose. Every little thing was very difficult. But we marched down and did a lot of work, and this actually made it to our local museum on the robotics floor, and also still the most famous facial expression data set on the internet. So that was early 2000. Nothing really worked particularly well until 2012. That was the pivotal moment for neural networks. Professor Fei-Fei Li at Stanford collected over 1 million pictures from the internet. So she was able to do this because the internet and social media was there. People finally started to post all these photos. So she collected all of them, labeled them, to use them as training data set for neural networks, because she had this instinct that it has to be, like they know it has to be a large data set, but how large? Back in the early 2000s, if you have 1,000 pictures, that's a large data set. Nobody ever dreamed of 1 million, and also, why would you do that if you're a computer scientist? Why are you labeling photos? So this is her TED Talk, and I took a screenshot just to show you. All these people made fun of her, told her to go do something else that's more useful. You're not doing computer science. You're not going to get tenure at Stanford. And so she had zero funding. Who is going to give her money to collect pictures from social media? And so she joked about opening a laundry shop just to raise funds. But that photo collection, she put that on the internet and ran a competition called ImageNet and challenged all the scientists around the world to use their algorithm to classify the photos. And they attracted this group under the supervision of Jeffrey Hinton, and he was one of the few people who was still doing neural network. He asked Yann LeCun, who actually has the neural network algorithm but that worked in 1989, but has already, most people have left neural network. They're not doing that work anymore, and they were all doing something else. They wanted their PhD students to do this competition. Nobody wanted to do anything. And so he finally decided that he has to bribe his students. He bought 2 GPUs, and also GPUs were really designed for gamers to have a better video game experience, so your computer is faster. Nobody actually knew that you can use that for AI, but he thought that might work. But he has to convince his students to program that GPU for this competition. So they eventually got it to work and submitted to the algorithm to ImageNet and got, just beat everybody else. And so this is the moment. This is what, 13, 14 years ago? This is the first time the world actually started to believe in neural network again. So here, as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of this country, right? Right here in Williamsburg, I was wondering, what would Thomas Jefferson think about AI? Luckily, thanks to our law school's AI and Democracy Conference, I was able to have dinner with Thomas, with my friends who are here, and we asked the question, and Thomas stuttered a little bit. He told me that it has something to do with knowledge, and he really is a fan of science, innovation, but he really doesn't know anything about AI, and even though he was at an AI conference. So I went on to Khan Academy, because Khan Academy actually now has these chatbots that will tutor you. It's called Kamigo. And one of the Kamigo lessons for history is that you can actually interview a historical figure. And one of them, of course, is Thomas Jefferson. So I went to the Thomas Jefferson chatbot and I asked the same question. I would like to know what you think about AI. And this is what the chatbot said, and it's actually not very different from what the real Thomas Jefferson Williamsburg said. But, there's a lot of analogy. And then I remembered, I read somewhere that little kids, when they use Kamigo, they can actually ask Thomas Jefferson to do math homework for them. Because Kamigo is not supposed to solve math problems for you. However, if you interview a historical figure, that historical figure hasn't been told to not do homework for you. And my students are all doing Python homework. They're doing programming homework. So I gave my students, I asked Thomas, can you solve this homework problem for me? It's a Python homework problem for annuity calculation. So this is what Thomas said. He said that, as you present me a puzzle of numbers and logic, written in the language of Python, a tongue most foreign to my own quill and parchment. So he was definitely speaking in a, sort of period appropriate style. But he did actually go on and give me a little bit of hint in the math equation. So I thought that's a little interesting. So these are really cute chatbots that are actually very useful now in education. But I would say that these are not the only AIs. Maybe chatbots are AIs that a lot of you are familiar with. But AI has progressed so much since what we have seen. And in fact, ChatGPT came out in 2022. That's really just an extension of all the neural networks work that have been happening over the last 10, 15 years since ImageNet. But ChatGPT has also been 4 years old. So the chatbot, the hallucinating chatbot that people are familiar with and complain about, it's really not the same as the AI models that we use in the business school when I teach AI. So I often have to ask people when they tell me that they use an AI but it doesn't work because it gives them wrong answers and so on. I always have to ask, which AI? You use Claude? Which Claude? There are like 5 different Claudes. Did you pay? Because if you didn't pay, it's probably not a very smart AI. So the language in the AI world, there's so many different kinds of AI now, it can be very confusing to have a conversation about AI. So there are multiple shades of AI. I want to remind everyone that, in the long past, we have many different kinds of AI. We have if-then statements, the symbolic AI, machine learning, neural networks. They are all sort of different aspects, different components of AI. And then we have generative AI. But generative AI is really just an application of neural networks. Fundamentally, they're actually equivalent mathematically with tiny tweaks. And then now we have agentic AI. And agentic AI is really generative AI plus a lot of just very classic software engineering practices. But because hallucinating chatbots have given AI such a bad reputation, all the new AI models, the new large language models, are agentic and reasoning models. They're not this naive hallucinating thing anymore. So most of them are a lot smarter because they've been trained to be a lot smarter. So in addition to just taking input, like taking a prompt from you and get a response, before it hallucinates anything, and hallucination is really just a cute way of saying the model made a mistake. It will pause and actually reason. Reason is about taking your prompt and break it down into small tasks. And then it will plan. Planning means that you will take the small tasks and sequence them in the correct order, which means that it'll make a to-do list. So you can actually see a to-do list from a reasoning model, and then it'll take action. So there's a to-do list, and the AI will actually do these things for you on your computer. So today's AI is agentic because it knows how to use tools like doing a web search. You know, the 2022 Chat GPT did not even know how to do a Google search. So by giving the AI a Google search capability, it just becomes so much smarter. Knows how to use data, it knows how to reflect. So next time when you prompt your AI, say, reflect. Reflect on what you said. Make sure it's correct. And then that alone makes it better. And now the smart AIs, they all know how to reflect before they say something. They also know how to say, I don't know, which is an important thing to learn. They actually never trained AIs to say, I don't know. So if you ask something they don't know, they are completing the sentence, so they'll just continue to make up something. But now the AIs know how to say, I don't know. They know how to check policy. They know how to ask human to review. So you don't actually have to write very, very thorough prompt. You can be a little vague, and the AI will come back and ask you for clarification. If they don't know something, they'll ask you for help. So today's AI actually go in this like agentic looping process. It'll take a prompt, it'll plan out the steps, it'll go execute the first step, and using a bunch of tools. The tools can be calculators, they can be API tools, and then they know how to write Python code, they know how to program, and then they'll execute the program and look at the output and reflect on the output and say, did I mess up? It'll check the answers, and if it's not good, it'll go back and revise and resubmit. And just by asking the AI to go through this process, which a lot of us do, when we work on something, we actually have to check the output, verify it's correct. If it's not correct, we go back and revise. We all have to do that if we're good students. We ask the AI to do that, all of a sudden, our AIs, today's AI, are much, much more productive and accurate. And if you're part of the William Mary system, I'm very excited to share that I just discovered, maybe I'm the only one who doesn't know, that we actually all have Chat GPT EDU license with our William Mary credential. And that credential, I believe, give us the large language model agent codex in addition to ChatGPT. So I want you to see that the chatbots that you're familiar with are very different from the agents that will actually do things for you. So ChatGPT's agent is called Codex, Claude's agent is called Claude Cowork or Claude Code, and Gemini's agent is Google AI Studio or Online or Gemini COI. So there are many, many different kinds of AI, and Claude, actually there are 4 different Claude. Claude Design, Claude Code, lots of different Claudes. And the online one, the desktop one, they're all a little different. So I would encourage you to try the agents. So Codex instead of ChatGPT on your desktop, that makes a whole world difference. So this is Codex on the desktop. It is a large language model coding agent, and coding sounds very intimidating. And a lot of people assume that you have to know how to code to write coding agent, but remember, this is a large language model. It actually understands English. The beauty of these models is that you can just give instruction in plain English. So you can give a prompt as usual, but one important difference is that you can, if this lives on your desktop, it'll access your files. And accessing your computer files may sound like something very trivial, but it makes the world of difference. You can dump all your Excel files, PDF, text files, Word document, PowerPoint, whatever, 500 files, 1,000 files, pictures, all in the same folder, it will be able to write software programs inside that folder and process everything and produce a Word document, a presentation. It'll run analysis, so include charts, diagrams, and write up an entire Word document report for you. Because guess what? Anything that you do on your computer is generated by code. Even the Word document, the Excel file that you think is done by a human, they all can be computer generated because they're all computer software. It also knows how to use tools, so there are endless connectors. All of a sudden, there are now tools that will connect to your AI. Your Zillow has a connector, your Weather Channel has a connector, I don't know, your Target, probably Walmart probably has a connector. I mean, everybody has a connector that can talk to your Claude, your AI. So what is AI really? You know, I would encourage you to think about AI as a normal computer software. Your computer, the Chinese people, so I'm from Taiwan. In Taiwan, we call the computer an electronic brain. Literally, that's what those two characters are. And why? Because your computer does brain work. It does cognitive work, and it has been doing that work for you for all these years. I teach AI in the business school, and how do I teach AI? How do we teach the humans how AI works? And I always believe that it's very important for people to understand how AI works in addition to knowing how to use it. Of course, in the business school, we're interested in the applications, but the fundamental understanding of how AI works helps our students think about it a little differently so that it's no longer a mystery. They know that it's actually just a bunch of math equations. Is that correct? All my students are here. They should all say yes. What is AI? It's math equations. And we teach little kids how this works. So I have published a book right here, AI the Magic Box, with all William Mary former students. Daniel C. was an art student. Alicia Yang, she was a data science and business student. And Ronnie Benjarian, he was an MSBA student. So together, we decided that the math behind neural networks is so simple that even a 9-year-old can understand, because most of it is you multiply and you add. You look at a number and you make a guess. And sometimes you guess correctly, sometimes you guess incorrectly, and you go on and you correct your mistake and you try again. So a complex neural network diagram, which is what we typically see if you Google neural networks, you can take one of the neurons, put it under the microscope, and you'll find out it's actually just a magic box with some cups to receive the input, and parameters are actually just weights on the arms. And they are all numbers we will multiply and add, and the output will be the magic box guess. And someone, the human usually, so the girl in the book, has the correct answer. So she is the supervisor. The supervisor has to go there and check if the neuron has made the correct answer. If it's wrong, she will push the red button to give the feedback, and the model will take the feedback, calculate the error, go back and adjust the weights, meaning adjust the numbers, and try again, and get closer and closer to the correct answer. All right. Help me complete this sentence. How are you doing tonight? Feeling. Very good. So these are all potential probable answers, high probability words out of the entire English dictionary. How about if I tell you the answer is, how are you, Connor? You're all hallucinating, chatbots, right? So the correct answer is here. You made a wrong guess, but that's okay. We will calculate the difference between Connor and the word that you guessed, go back, adjust the model, and try again. How does the model do that? In fact, your computer, even though you think AI is brilliant, is completely illiterate. It doesn't understand a single word. Every single word has to be turned into a number because your computer is a computer. It computes. It's a giant calculator. It does one thing very well, which is math. So every single word in the dictionary has to be turned into words, and then we start to do multiplication and addition, come up with a new number, 1004, and you go to the dictionary, look up word 1004. If that word is feeling, then feeling is the answer that Magic Box has guessed, but that may be a wrong answer if the correct answer is Connor. But that's okay, because Connor is also another number. Then we'll calculate the difference between the two, use that to go back and adjust the numbers in a way that will get closer to the correct answer. So this iterative adjustment process is really how AIs are trained. You can do that by hand, and I always set up this little simulator in Excel to show my students how I can train a little naked neuron that can see all the formulas. You can count this whole thing by hand. And there's no magic because it's naked. You can see all the equations. There's multiplication and addition and an if statement, and that's it. And this model, in a few minutes, will go from knowing nothing to knowing everything in this data set. So how does AI differ from conventional machines? It is trained through this iterative process. It's making guesses to get closer and closer to the correct answer, but it's not always exactly correct. So this probabilistic nature is what confuses the public a lot. Why? Because most of the machines in our lives are deterministic machines. You use a vending machine, you push a number for Coke, you should get a Coke. If you get a coffee, that machine is broken. Your coffee maker, your laundry machine, they all should do, your dishwasher, they all should do exactly what you say. If it doesn't do what you say, it's broken. However, an AI is not a vending machine. It's more like a slot machine. You go there, you push the button. Sometimes you get what you want, but oftentimes you don't. It's a lottery. An AI is a probabilistic machine. And if you expected it to be working like a slot machine, you wouldn't be so disappointed anymore. I also teach with music. I teach with jewelry. So I actually have my little neural network right here. My friend made me 3 neurons. And we draw everything by hand. So a lot of times people will ask me, so how do you prevent students from using AI to cheat? My students never cheat. They sit here. They never cheat. I have the best students. But I have worksheets. Instead of using the machine to do everything, we actually just calculate all the neurons by hand. And by calculating all the neurons by hand, they know over and over again, they know exactly how the math works. It's very simple. They can do it. And if anybody says that your friends fall in love with AI tells you to commit suicide and go commit suicide, well, you should tell them to take my class. They will immediately fall out of love because AI is just a bunch of math equations. So these are all the different math equations. We would do image recognition, neural networks using, very simple equations and matrices. My students all know that words are actually just a bunch of numbers. You can actually plot them on a 2D or a 3D graph and calculate which words are close to each other and how to move them closer to each other and use that to predict the next word. We hear a lot of these human-like descriptions of AI, like this AI reason, it pays attention. All these sound like what humans would do. And that makes people feel very confused about AI, and it sounds very mysterious and magical. So how do I deal with that? My students all need to compute attention on a piece of paper. They have to calculate. And they know After this exercise, they know that attention really is just a bunch of multiplications and additions. And all these exercises are included in my upcoming textbook, AI for Business. And this is how we teach in the business school. Now I'm trying to get people to truly understand how AI works instead of treating it as a magic box. My students are all building AI agents. In fact, a lot of my MBA students here, they're actually finalizing an ebook together. We're writing agents for business. This is one of the projects. They're writing agents for project management, and you can write these things actually in your browser in your Google Drive, and it works magically right there. Another one, agents for operations, procurement intelligence. They will come up with a little scenario and actually write a bunch of tools for the agents to use, and they all have to verify that the agents actually give you correct answers. And this is how we control the agents, is by understanding how it works, by learning how to code. So instead of praying that your AI will not hallucinate, which doesn't work because it will hallucinate, but instead of doing that, we take action, we learn, and we learn the skills to tell the agent to do exactly what they should do. Again, if your best friend says that they're falling in love with AI, just show them the math equations. How can we teach AI? You know, I am working on these research projects where we take liberal arts research from a psychology lab, where we actually code, again, frame by frame, baby behavior, their motor development, parent-child interaction. We can actually use the data to teach Gemini how to be a better baby monitor. We benchmark Gemini's behavior against our undergraduate student coders' performance. In fact, Gemini is a little better than our students in many dimensions. We also are trying to teach AI to become a better tutor. In my class, my students, half of them had to take a lesson with me, half of them have to learn from Gemini, and we have learned that they actually do better during the session because AI is better at giving answers, but they don't perform as well afterwards. So there are many opportunities. My students love the AI as a tutor, but they prefer to learn from me first. But I cannot be there 24/7 for them. So after they have learned from me, I want them to use AI as a tutor afterwards. So we're working together to teach the AI to become a better tutor. You can also teach AI to become more globally minded. So I'm from Taiwan. It's a very tiny country. Not many people know about it. So we can teach AI actually by writing a document called Taiwan.md. These markdown files can make your AI instantly a Taiwan expert. So this is some, people who study cultural studies. We have a real opportunity to teach AI to be more culturally responsive. Together, we make a better world. My students have been doing all sorts of projects to help the community using AI. They're here, and I invite all of you to talk to my students. They can show you all the apps, the web apps, the mobile apps they have built to help our local community, global community. We have many faculty members doing amazing research using AI to help with emergency responses or to help get kids through the juvenile justice system more quickly. They are able to use AI to identify kids who get stuck in infinite loops in the justice system and to offer help. Here is a physics project by Dr. Yan's student.
And we're developing a smart pen light that leverages lightweight AI models to replace inherent subjectivity from human pupillary assessments, instead providing emergency responders with fast, objective, and accurate measurements.
In order to get the iRay's pen light down to a convenient, usable size for EMTs, we had to design a custom circuit board to contain all the electronics and computing power for the iRay's project.
To help the AI see better than humans, we designed a dual spectrum imaging system using visible and near-infrared light.
Isn't that amazing? Julia, Johnny, Jacob, and Dr. Yan are right here in the audience. Feel free to talk to them about their project if you're interested. So what do I do every morning when I make coffee? Before I make coffee, I ask, what can I have my AI do? I can give my AI my CV. It'll turn it into an interactive website while I make coffee. It can move a website from one place to another. It can develop an entire curriculum, adaptive system to teach my students Python. It can create an interactive timeline for the history of AI lesson that I always give. There are endless uses of AI that saves hundreds and hundreds of hours and make me a better teacher. So I would say that AI is like a crutch. It doesn't replace what I do, but it does give me superpower. I feel like I have a software engineering team working for me 24/7. So now let's use our puzzle pieces. You think AI is killing liberal arts or energizing liberal arts? Yes, I'm very happy to see all the yellow stickers. Our students are using AI not to destroy humanity. They're using AI to empower humanity. And you may hear different opinions, and that's what a liberal arts education is about. Jeffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize in 2024, is very, very pessimistic about the future of AI, whereas Yann LeCun, who won the Turing Award with him at the same time, thought that AI is dumber than his cat. So who should we listen to? People say that AI is destroying the environment, using too much water. Think twice before you watch Netflix, because I think you use more water when you watch Netflix. But think about the computers or memories that used to be this big. It would take up a whole room, but now it's only like it's smaller than your thumb. This is science. This is why we need to invest in scientific research. Yes, these giant machines may create environmental problems, but that same brilliant scientist will solve that problem as well. So AI may create problems, but it also may bring progress for us. And if we're worried about the world, we're concerned about how AI is destroying the world, guess what? Thomas Jefferson has given us the first law school in the nation, and we have the best law faculty and researchers who are working very hard to help us think about how to deal with all the challenges that AI has created. So thank you, Professor Hu, who's in the audience, who has just recently published a book on AI law and policy. And I'm very, very grateful that we have a great community here to think about these hot problems. So AI may present new challenges, but AI can also offer new solutions. Again, another cognitive neuroscientist, not a computer science, who won a Nobel Prize in 2024 in the category of chemistry, because the same AI, that's your hallucinating chatbot, actually was able to predict all the, a variety of that, actually was able to predict all the synthetic proteins, which will give us breakthroughs, major breakthroughs in drug discovery and actually help us cure cancer. And that happens to be, Denise Hosby happens to be the CEO of Google DeepMind. So the same algorithm that won the chess game, AlphaGo, about 10 years ago, is the same algorithm that's used for drug discovery. So yes, AI may create energy crisis, but guess what? It may actually solve energy crisis for us. Maybe AI will bring us fusion. Maybe AI will cure cancer. I'm not sure about world peace, but hopefully, who knows? What we need is people who are very smart, like you, working very hard on these hard problems. So just like Sense and Sensibility had very, very humble beginnings, Jane Austen was not even able to say her name on the book. AI also had very humble beginnings. It really was a bunch of nerds being very curious about how the mind works, and had no idea that one day we will have hallucinating chatbots. The liberal arts education that we have here is designed to cultivate wisdom We want our students to think slow, to question, to disagree. You should question everything I said. Imagine different alternative solutions, have compassion, and also, most importantly, to bring the judgment to decide when AI should be used or not. So what is wisdom? Is it sense or sensibility? I propose that we need both. We need both logic and compassion and emotion and the kindness that we have for others. We need to put the puzzle pieces together to help us really make better decisions about AI. So with that, I want to thank my many, many co-authors and colleagues who helped me put together this lecture, and also all my student ambassadors here who are ready to answer your questions about AI. Thank you very much.